Simplicity is a strategic advantage. When you get rid of the unnecessary, you can move faster and you can focus.
I'm Amy Woodall, and this is The Conscious Habit, a show from the People Forward Network. We're teaching you how to incorporate love and consciousness at work, at home, and the world at large. You just heard from Lisa Bodell. She's a futurist and the founder of FutureThink. They are the world's largest source for simplification and innovation tools and training. And Lisa's also the author of two best-selling books, one being Why Simple Wins and the other Kill the Company. She is a monthly contributor for Forbes with frequent appearances in Fast Company, Wired, The New York Times, Harvard Business Review, CNN, and more. Simply put, Lisa is an innovative badass. I loved our conversation, and even our first meeting before we hit record, I had an entire page of notes. I know that you are going to as well, so be sure to grab your pen and paper, save this episode, and take a listen. Conscious Habit listeners, have you ever felt like you don't have the time to work on the things that are really important to you, not just as an individual, but also in your organization, and feeling like you are chasing your tail, maybe even doing the same thing over and over again, and you feel like you just can't get ahead, or that innovation is seriously lacking? Y'all, lean into our conversation today because we have Lisa Bodell, and this is her jam. She is like the queen of simplicity. Lisa travels all over the world working with some of the largest brands that you and I know well, helping them learn how to stop doing shit that doesn't matter. Lisa, I took ad lib to that. I'm sure you don't tell your clients that, but really learning how to lean into simplicity. And it isn't just about what we're doing at work. It also is an impact on our well-being. So I'm really excited to learn from you today, Lisa. I know our listeners are as well. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about it too. I think really embracing simplification can be life-changing for people, not just at work, but in their lives. So let's tell them how.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm excited for that. If we think about it, I mean, time is literally the only thing we cannot make more of. We cannot make it. It doesn't matter how much money we have. We may be able to use it more wisely, which is, a big part of our conversation today, but we can't make more of it. So I'm, again, truly excited to learn from you.
Well, you brought up something interesting. That really is the issue is time, right? It's not about more processes or more things or more stuff. It's getting more time. And time is a non-renewable resource. You will never get it back. It's the one thing that once it's spent, it's gone. And that's what people really need to get more mindful or conscious about is, are you spending your time? Or are you investing it? And we really need to be more protective of our time. So while we're here, we use it in a way that really makes an impact on things that are important to us, not important to others, or frankly, are just useless. And too many people would tell you that they spend their time on things that are obligations, useless, unnecessary, and it has to stop, right? It has to stop. So we're really going to teach people how to take back their time for things that matter, personally and professionally.
I got my notes ready, sister. I am like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice to have more control of your time?
It is. And I think this intentionality, and then I know we'll get into this, but I so appreciate the doing nothing with time of just like being in this spaciousness. That's where I'm able to tap into a more conscious space for myself because the subconscious and unconscious mind, it's running the show, baby. And so we've got to give it time to really slow down and be able to look at things through a lens of, is this what I want? Does this feel good? Is this important?
When's the last time you've had time to think about that or even just check in with yourself? It's not, you probably are better at it than most, right? Because it's a forward practice for you. But for others, they are not intentional with their time. In fact, I tell people that I bet they are just executing their calendar. And that's very different than being in control of your time. The biggest issue that we lack by giving away our time, it has an impact on us in terms of, kind of sucking our energy, draining our soul, makes us a little sad. But it doesn't allow us the space to think. And if we really want to grow personally, or if we really want to grow our businesses, thinking can't be a daring act. It can't be something that we fit in between other stuff. And so one of the things about taking control of your time is freeing up time to literally let your mind wander. And I don't mean it just always in the Zen aspect, but, to really think about a problem or to really consider, what does matter to me? Am I just giving away my time? So if we could give people more time to think and not think that doing that is lazy, because that's one of the issues. You think if you just have unstructured time, well, now you're being lazy. Like, why aren't you doing something? Well, thinking is just as important as doing, and we've got to change that mindset for people so they don't feel guilty doing it.
I'm looking right now, and obviously, listeners, you cannot see this, but I'm going to describe it to you. I did a retreat with some women in Jacksonville about a month or so ago. And one of the participants who was incredible between day one and day two, she made stickers for all of us with her favorite sayings of what we had covered in our conscious habit retreat. And one of the favorites was human beings, not human doings. And it's difficult to solve a problem from the same energy that created it, which is typically this like go, 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 push through, push through. And so if we need enlightenment, right, we've got to do the opposite of what's true. We just had Fabrice Demarceau on the podcast, and he wrote a book called The Art of Retreat, and he challenged people to create 2.5 hours every single week to retreat, to just give them space to be so that they can think more clearly. What do you think about that, Lisa?
I wholeheartedly embrace that. I mean, I say from a business perspective too, which is how do you mandate thinking time or what we call deep work? And we have to actually get to the point now because, if I could meet all the big ones, I would love to just shake them. Time management gurus and productivity experts and, they're, management consultants that are preaching more about productivity and efficiency. They've created this culture that has been about getting more blood from a stone. And that's not a way to live your life or run a business because what that means is people become addicted to doing and they become guilty for thinking. And I really think being able to carve out time is important. And organizations are already seeing this. So, myself as a boss, I mandate to my team that they carve out a half day every week. That's more than 2.5 hours.
I love that.
Yeah. And that can be just thinking, it can be writing, it can be doing strategy, it can be ticking off big rocks on your list. I mean, that's up to them. But the point is, I'm sending the signal that thinking is important and I expect you to do it. And there are a lot of organizations that are doing the same. And when it comes to things like strategic thinking, right? That's like big thinking, right? They say leaders need to do it 1 hour a week. Managers need to do it at least 1 hour a month. And individual workers need to carve out time to do it at least an hour a year. And that's not very much, right? And we need to be able to spend more time thinking if we're going to grow. That's the problem, is that's why we feel like we're a hamster on a treadmill because we're doing, but people feel that they can't change it and they feel that they can't get off this kind of treadmill that they're on. And the only way to get off the treadmill is to stop moving. Stop. And we have more control over it than we think, which is something we should talk about. The issue is people feel that they don't have control, and they do. It's just figuring out what is in their control so they can start to get used to taking back their time.
Is this like part of your work, helping people undo the story of what they think is true? Because I mean, I've heard this so many times is it's we need more help or I need to delegate or I don't have time to slow down because none of this stuff is going to get, and it's really, there's so much of it. I'm wondering is how much of it is story versus how much is truth. So how do you help people navigate beyond the story that they've been living in?
I talk to them about the complexity trap. And there's a few what they think are truths, or I say they're myths that we have to undo. So, for example, being organized is not the same thing as being simplified. And the productivity gurus, they just, if you could only get up earlier, if you could only multitask more, if you could only make a better to-do list, if you could wake up every day and like make your list of things to do and check them off and be organized and time box yourself. Being organized is not the same thing as being simplified because it doesn't matter if you're doing everything right if you're not doing the right things. That's one thing. The other thing is we value addition more than subtraction, and we have to build and balance subtraction in our life because subtraction is valuable. And especially in companies, right? Whatever work we do or in our personal life too, we do a lot personally out of obligation. And professionally, we do it out of fear of being fired, fear out of missing out, fear of not being relevant. And so we have to actually, as leaders, if we lead a team, teach people that you expect them to get rid of things and question things just as much as you expect them to do more, right? The message is always more. That's why people love to be busy, because I'm busier than you are, Amy. Oh, but Amy, then you're going to tell me you're busier than me because you want to feel more important. Another one that's really interesting is this addiction to doing overthinking and thinking being a daring act. And so that's why we've got to make sure that people, when they spend time thinking, they realize they are adding value. And that's not a common feeling that people get. You know, if you just catch someone staring out the window, your first reaction typically is get back to work. Or, boy, someone's got too much time on their hands. Well, just because it's internal doesn't mean that it's less important than the external doing. So, yes, those are the kinds of things I want people to rethink so they can start really being purposeful with their time and spending it on what matters. And when they think, they define what matters. And we don't do that enough.
I think that the defining what matters seems like such an important exercise, but I want to circle back to I immediately wrote it down when you said it. Organization and simplification are not the same thing. And my mind immediately went to like Steve Jobs, like, okay, I can see organization is like I have a perfectly organized closet and I know where everything is. Simplified is I wear black shirts every day, so I don't have to think about what I need. What are some additional examples when you look in organizations? And you can see where they've prioritized organization and yet they have not simplified to what is truly meaningful for them. Are there some examples that come to mind?
I'll give you actually building on your closet example, because I use the example of, Marie Kondo, who is the simplification expert, right? What gives you joy? And the beauty of her wasn't that she organized everything in your closet. It was that she got rid of the stuff that didn't bring you joy, the unnecessary, so that what was left you could focus on because it mattered. And, it's not like you can look at your inbox and say, does this email bring me joy? You can't.
Nope.
But what you can do is look at what you spend your time on and circle the things harshly that either bring you joy, satisfaction, that you were hired to do, or valuable. And the things that aren't, really ask yourself, why do you do them? And what are the drivers of that? Is it fear? Is it obligation? What could you really pilot getting rid of? Because fear makes people say, I can't get rid of that. And I can't get rid of that. I can't get rid of that. And sometimes we create the beast that we become a slave to. So I'll go into organizations. I'm doing it today here in Seattle. I'm giving a big talk at PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. And believe me, a lot of the consultants push back and they tell me everything they do is valuable. I said, then what's wrong? Why aren't you just loving work if everything's valuable? And they'll say, well, it's a lot of meetings, it's a lot of emails. And I'll say, then why don't you question those things? And they say, well, I don't really know if I can. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And I said, why don't you just pilot trying something different? And they do. They commit to just getting even back a half hour, Amy, a week, like by changing the frequency of a meeting or shortening the meeting, or maybe not doing a weekly report, do it monthly, just to see the impact. And wouldn't you know it, when you check back in with those people, they're transformed. Who knew that they could really make those changes? People figured that out during COVID, by the way, because when we were forced to change, it was amazing the things we could get rid of so we could focus and move faster, right? It's possible. We just get in our own way. We have to start thinking about what's in the way.
Yeah, I love that you're helping people dig even deeper. And again, like consciousness is such an important part of this. It's required to say, I have been going through the motions, and it's wild how quickly our brains adapt or how quickly we move to a comfort zone. Like we're very much wired to like, this is how it is. Even if I'm miserable, it's easier to adapt to an unknown hell than an unknown heaven. And we just make all of these rules that create these limitations. And then there's a box that we're not happy in, but we've made the box.
We need the box. Now, some of the things I will tell you are necessary. I mean, it's not easy to say to someone, they'll say, look, all this stuff sounds great, but, I'm a working parent with 2 kids. There's just too much stuff. I've got a boss that's difficult. I have a client that needs me. And what I say to that is, yeah, believe me, I've been there. But what I also can say is that there is no way that when you look at how you spend your time, because this is going to get back to consciousness, that there aren't some things that you do out of obligation and fear. And we really have to be brave to be open to change. I mean, when you say, consciousness to me, by the way, is intention. I'm aware. I have had time to think about what matters to me. And that acts as the compass that allows you to stop being slave to the clock. And I think that that's a very big differentiator for people. They spend no time on compass because they're drowning in the clock. And that's why we have an epidemic of burnout. This isn't just about, gosh, I'm spending all my time on so many amazing things. It's I'm spending so much time on things that just don't give me energy or joy or satisfaction. What am I doing? And that's why people quit. That's why people aren't happy at home, either in their marriage or with their families or whatever, because they're not doing the things that they dreamed about. And to take control, we have to be more intentional with time. So stop thinking of it as being selfish with your time. I want you to be more intentional and practical with your time.
What's a good indicator, for listeners? Many of our listeners are executives or they're business owners or they're leaders by mindset. They may not even have, a leadership title. But what are some of the things that people might experience? I think we've already talked about some of those of just feeling like we don't have the time and we're chasing our tail. Anything else that people might be experiencing in their lives or in their work lives that would tell them that they would benefit from doing some simplification exercises?
Yeah. I would ask a couple questions. One, are you happy? The second one I would ask is, do you feel in control of your time? Another thing I would ask is, if you don't, what's stopping you? And just those three questions there are really interesting, just to see how you answer them in a real honest way. And you should do it alone, by the way, because when you do it with other people, people get political. They put, they're busy, they're so important, all this stuff. It's not them, it's everyone else. And I think most people would tell you, because there's an epidemic, 80% of people in a recent Gartner report said they were burned out, and they were even more burned out than the year before. That's an epidemic. The reason people want to quit work isn't because they don't want to work hard. It's because they're not doing things that they were hired to do. And the reason people aren't happy at home is because they feel like they're doing things that aren't giving them energy. It's draining. So if those are things, when they answer those questions that aren't aligned with who they are or where they want to be going, I think they really need to take a look at getting more protective, not selfish, with their time. And the idea is to start small. It's like with diets that never work because you're changing so much, it's never going to stick. People don't change habits that way. It's very hard for people to change. So small starts, we call them little bigs, are the way that you're going to be able to start getting your time back. You can do it. And if you say there's no way you can change it, I don't believe it. I don't buy it.
Ladies, imagine taking time away to work on you. Meditation, yoga, transformational work, a chance to have grand adventures and build lasting relationships. Desiree Garcia and I founded High Vibe Tribe Retreats to create just that. And if you're curious about joining us on our next retreat, head over to highvibetriberetreat.com, link in the show notes. Yeah, I think you're right that it probably comes from a place of fear. And sometimes it's, easier to be the martyr than it is to take control over what we're really able to, control in our lives. I think that I love this step, Lisa, that you mentioned of like just looking at your day through the lens of curiosity. What is an obligation? What am I saying yes to in fear? That feels like such a good place to start.
Well, you brought up Steve Jobs, and it's one of the things he always asked his lead designer, right, Joni Ive, what did you say no to today? And that's a really contrarian question because usually what you do with the boss is say all the things you did, right? Look at all the amazing things. But he was saying, what did you not say yes to? So you could focus on the things I wanted you to. And that's a really powerful thing for you to do as a leader, even if it's just in practice. Hey, what did you stop doing? Why did you do that? Why aren't you getting rid of that? Because it makes people really, it's almost like if they feel guilty saying no to things, we got to start making them feel guilty for saying yes to things. That's a really powerful thing to do. And personally, you can start to really think about, what did I say no to today? And if day after day, the answer is nothing, why are you saying yes to everything? People say, I can't say no. And I say, well, then don't say no, say yes if. And the reason that's really powerful is because We have this dynamic of people taking our time versus having shared responsibility and using our time. And what I mean by that, Amy, is if a boss, I'm the boss, for example. And if I go to an employee and say, I need this done now. Now, there's a lot of instances where they need to do it. But there's also a lot of instances where they can push back on me and say, yes, I can do that if I can push this thing back, if I can take more time here. We're setting boundaries together versus them having to do everything at my whim. So shared responsibility for time is a really important thing to do. You're not being a jerk. You're not saying no, but you're asking the person who's asking to help with the trade-offs because they're being selfish if they say, you have to just say yes every time. That's not right.
No, it's not. And we teach people how to treat us. Like, I mean, I have this conversation in coaching all the time is we teach people how to treat us. So if this isn't working for you, what is the rule you have written in your mind that has told you that you can't say no? And you wrote that rule. It's not working for you. How can you rewrite it? And what I have found, Lisa, you've mentioned this a couple of times, conscious habit, our tagline is the root of result begins within. And we're really big on helping people identify their ego's hold because we all have ego and it is not all bad. But if it's running the show, it makes a freaking mess of things. And for some of us, our ego is driven by achievement, which means busyness is a badge of honor. Like you mentioned, I'm busy, therefore I'm important. And some of us, our ego is driven by the pleasure of other people or pleasing other people. So we're willing to sacrifice ourselves in hopes that we will prove we are worthy or good enough. And yet we're completely burned out. And the same can happen with a perfectionistic type ego where we just have these unimaginable standards. As you're talking about this, I can think how each one of those styles, a people pleaser or perfectionist or an overachiever, how they can get wrapped into overcomplicating things and, getting far away from their compass because they're working by the clock.
I was doing interviews for my last book and I was talking to a behavioral psychologist. And, the phrase that she always uses is stop abandoning yourself. And the reason I say that is because we always say like things are just out of our control. Change isn't binary. It's not a yes or a no. It's a degree of change, right? So if you want to change it, you can. It just depends on how much. And, I'm not telling people, for example, if you are really upset at work and you have a terrible boss and blah, 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 just to quit your job. I mean, some people can't do that. They have to work, right? But trying some of these little tricks, right? The yes if, et cetera, and setting boundaries or focusing on their daily sphere of control of, saying no to a meeting, going less frequently, suggesting stupid rules to kill in the name of, quote, efficiency, even though it's really in terms of mental health. There are lots of little things you can start to do to chip at the iceberg to get some time back and get some energy back. I like to say that work is at a breaking point and so are people. And we don't seem to realize the corollary between those two, right? We've got to do a better job looking at how we work. We think it's beneath us, right? Meetings, emails, oh, what a pain in the ass. We'll fix them. Question them. Build that in. And we actually teach people, we have this method called kill a stupid rule. So if you're at a company, by the way, I think this is the number one thing to do. You get your team together and you say, if we could kill any two rules that hold us back or suck our time sucks, what would you change and why? And people come up with literally dozens of things. Dozens. I'm going to do it today here and with this group of 250 leaders. And here's what's going to happen. They're going to give me rules that they hate. And that most of the things, though, that they're going to suggest won't be rules. And they're going to be so into telling me what isn't working, they're going to ask me for more time on this exercise. It's cathartic. But they don't think to do it. And no one's asked them to because they get rewarded for more, not less. If I get rid of things, I won't be valuable. There are lots of ways to get your time back. If you build into the system, let's get rid of the stupid so we can make room for the substantial. And it starts with us.
I love that exercise because I bet it creates such a good conversation, especially, if their leaders are at the table or whoever, for people to say, that's a rule? I didn't know that. I don't follow that. I didn't, to see how many of them are rules of the mind versus true rules of the organization.
100%. You said that really well. Rules of the mind versus true rules. And that's really the revelation, right? Which is, so I was doing this kill a stupid rule once with it was the CEO of Merck at the time, Ken, who's this amazing guy. And he looked at his team. I had like hundreds of leaders in the room. And he said, I love that you came up with all these rules, right? We're looking at the board behind us that people post all these rules. And he said, these are amazing. How many of you think you could get rid of some of these rules right now? Everyone raises their hand, right? These are his top, hundreds of leaders. And he looked at them and said, why aren't you doing it? Are you waiting for me as the CEO to tell you that you officially have Vine permission to not have a 60-minute meeting, but make it a 30-minute meeting? I mean, these are ridiculous things. And the assumption is, like you said before, we assume that we are powerless. Whereas the leaders are saying, I can't believe you are not doing this. This is crazy. Leaders are really, they're shocked. Now, I wouldn't just say surprised, they're shocked that they actually have to tell their team to make these decisions on how they work. We figure it's written in stone because it's the way we've always done it, right? We don't challenge the status quo. Well, we always have our status meetings. We've been doing that till the end of time. So what? I mean, so if we don't need it, change it, try it, right? Change doesn't have to be permanent. We can always go back if we don't like it. So that's why I tell leaders that are risk averse, pilot getting rid of things. But 9 times out of 10, the change sticks because these are low risk things, right? They're low risk. You're not going to touch the things that are going to get you fired. That's the idea. And so leaders are always surprised that the people that work for them, their managers, don't just naturally do this. But frankly, that's on the leaders because one, the leaders don't model this behavior. We need to say no more. We need to not attend the meeting. We need to tell people, I expect you to subtract things, not just add. I expect you to tell me what you're stopping doing. I want to know what you're saying no to. Those need to be metrics. And that will send the message or change the mindset with people that, oh, I shouldn't just be adding. I mean, we literally, this is funny. I talked to the chief people officer at Kickstarter, and they had a whole program there called Time Crime because it is a crime to waste people's time. And I love that, right? I mean, it is criminal if you are wasting people's time on things that you don't need to. And it completely shifted people's mindsets that meetings are the last resort. If there's a meeting on the calendar, you better make it worth my time. And that is totally different than how most people operate. So if I can get leaders to start changing that mindset, other people will follow because they have been brainwashed to think that more is the only way that you add value.
I love how you framed that questions that leaders can ask their folks. I think it always starts at the top, right? Are they living out what they're asking and encouraging their people to do? And so if they're saying, what did you say no to today? Man, how powerful would it be if the leader shared the things that they said no to? Do you find that happens, Lisa? I can think of several examples in organizations where I was talking to a friend who's like, one of my clients said, please don't answer my emails over the weekend when I send them to you. And yet the leader was still sending emails over the weekend. So obviously people are going to feel like her telling them no isn't going to change it until she changes her behavior. And so where have you seen, that importance of how the leader leads to make it stick?
So for example, at EY, we used to be Ernst & Young, I've seen this at Dell, especially in organizations where they have ironically, a younger staff. And what I mean by this is because typically when people are younger and they come into work, they don't know the rules of engagement yet. I mean, people that have been around the block for a while, believe me, they're over it. And they know how to play the rules of engagement. And what I mean by that is there's this sometimes sense of false urgency with people that they feel they have to respond to everything right now, right away, so I can show them that I'm I'm an up and comer. Dell actually had a email signature that they started to use with leaders called a truly human notice. And it said, are you getting this email out of normal working hours? We work at a digitally relentless pace. I'm sending this at a time that works for me. Respond at a time that works for you. Because they wanted to reinforce with every email, calm down. I'm not telling you to do this. You're doing this. I'm giving you permission. So if you respond, that's the other thing is it's on you. Now, of course, if this was an urgent email, they didn't include that signature. I mean, there's ways, it's not an all or nothing. But these are small ways that actually they changed the internal culture with people to stop the epidemic of false urgency and burnout. That is really what it gets down to, which is, again, we often create the beast that we become a slave to through false urgency and assumptions, through the cult of busy, through not doing subtraction. And until we actually change the mindset of people, they will be caught up in this, again, the hamster wheel of more, 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 more. And there are things we could do to change. That's it.
Man, what a ripple effect of that too. I mean, because if you're operating from a place, and again, I'll use your language of compass over clock, like really knowing what matters to the organization, to the department, to the individual, being able to really operate from what lights you up and is in flow with your skill set and all of those pieces, then companies can be more innovative. You can grow faster. You can there's so many things that you get out of the way so that you can move at a much faster pace. It's really damn hard to innovate when you're burned the hell out. It's really hard to innovate when you're just going through the motions.
That's the point, which is, when people say, oh, so simplicity, you're going to help me be more productive. And I said, um, no, no. And the reason I'd say no is because that's not the point. Yeah, you're going to be more productive on the things that matter. You're going to be more efficient. And you are, let's say at work, going to save time and money. At home, you're going to save energy and you're going to be more engaged. But the point is bigger than that. This is a strategic and a cultural initiative. It is also a well-being initiative. And what I mean by that is simplicity is a strategic advantage. When you get rid of the unnecessary, you can move faster and you can focus. And the reason most people are falling behind, at companies is because people are drowning. They can't get to the stuff they need to do. And it's not just because the world's moving fast. It's because they're doing crap they shouldn't. The bigger thing, it's cultural. If you get the work right, you get the culture right. If people spend their day in meetings and emails, I don't care how many benefits you give them. It doesn't matter. That is the culture, right? I do crap all day long. Culture is what you go home and complain about at night. That is what it is. And then it's well-being because, we are performing at work. We're just giving people, like the press release on, we offer yoga benefits that people never use. We have meditation rooms that are filled with people taking conference calls because all the conference rooms are booked. So it's performative. Yeah, that's nice that you're giving me these things, but you know what I really want? I want meaningful work and I want you to stop wasting my time. You do that, people will be more engaged, they'll be less burned out, they'll have more energy, and they will be more dedicated to you as a boss and to you as a company. That saves time and money. But that's not the point, right? Stop saying you're focused on happier employees if you're not fixing the work, because you're not really focused on happier employees.
This is such a great conversation. I've been in many clients' places where they cannot wait to show me the meditation room or the nap room or whatever it is that they have. And then I always ask them, and how often is this used? And they're like, oh, nobody ever uses this. And to your point, Lisa, it is like you have to follow the right steps in order for that to even be leveraged in a way. Like maybe somebody would use that, but they're not going to do it if they're chasing their tail and they feel like they can't slow down. And it is pointless until you do the other work.
It's pointless until you do the other work. That's true. And to me, the nap room, for example, is misplaced. I mean, maybe if you have I don't know, new mothers. I mean, that's great. But number one, a lot of people think it's gross. Like, I don't want to nap where everyone else is napping. And other people are like, what are you going to do? Say to your colleague right now, given the culture we have, hey, I'm going to go take a nap. And meanwhile, they're busting ass on all this other stuff. That's a great example of not thinking things through. You know what I mean? You know what I'd rather have? Less crappy work. So I don't need to take a nap. It's kind of like we're not getting at the root cause. We're just treating a symptom. And that's a waste of money and time.
Truly, I hope that our listeners took as many notes as I have on this conversation, and that they are asking themselves that, like, it isn't just about being more organized. It isn't just about thinking in new ways necessarily. You got to give yourself the space to do that and really question what you're already saying yes to.
You do. And that is the biggest thing I hope people take away, which is the benefits of simplicity are so much more than productivity. And only thinking of it in terms of productivity is a complete missed opportunity. You don't go to people and say, Amy, I really need you to be more productive. I mean, what's your reaction when I say that? It's offensive. But when I say, Amy, I really need you to take control of your time to do the work that mattered, that I hired you to do, because I am just wasting your potential of what you could contribute here. Then I'm like, thank you so much. I can get on board with that. I'm bought in it. That's important.
There is, I think it was Lululemon. Actually, a client sent me an article. She's like, have you read this? I said, I have not. And it was an article from Lululemon that came out that said, we have released our new well-being report. And what they are saying is people are unwell because of the pressure of well-being. And when I read through it, it did make sense because we're overcomplicating, whether it's happening in organizations, how you do anything's how you do everything. These patterns exist everywhere. We are overcomplicating and feeling like I have to get up at 5 and then I have to journal for 5 minutes and then I have to meditate for 15 and then I've got to get outside and I need light in my eyes and I need vitamin D. And so, Lisa,
Well, that's how I feel. I feel like it's, I can't get up any earlier. We're always made to feel that we're the problem. We are never doing enough. And it's kind of like when people are like, be happy. I mean, of course, I want everyone to be happy, but, then there's the pressure of, are we the happiest place to work? Why aren't you more happy? I need to be happy. And then we think happy. And it's, you know what? I'm going to be happy when I'm doing things that I like. You can't make people be happier in the context of how things are, right? And that's what you're saying too. So, yeah, Lululemon's onto something. The epidemic of burnout is also this pressure. Same thing with simplicity. I can't achieve simplicity by multitasking. I can achieve simplicity by subtracting, and that's different.
such a fresh perspective, I think, as we always are putting the pressure on ourselves to figure out just a new way of operating and streamline. And, there's so much pressure. So thank you, Lisa, for sharing your insights and doing this incredible work that you do in the world and even giving us permission listening to slow down and say no. I think we all needed to hear that.
We did. Well, thank you. And I am so happy to share it because if you can give people more meaning in their lives, make them feel less stressed and burned out, and being able to help them reach their potential, I think we're all put on this earth to do something, to make some specific impact. And if we can't get to it, that's a crime. I hope we can change that.
Yeah, us too. We'll have all the links for people to get connected to you, but I'm curious, where are your favorite places to hang out and share your wisdom?
Well, specifically, link in with me. I hope everybody here goes on LinkedIn because I have a lot of articles and newsletters and funny memes that I post making fun of work that would be great for them to follow. You can go to my website, futurethink.com, where my team, we teach simplification. There's lots of free resources there that I hope will help people here start getting rid of the things that don't matter so they can get engaged on what they love.
Incredible. Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom. Oh, so grateful.
Thanks, Amy.
Before we wrap up this episode, here are my 3 takeaways from Lisa and how we can incorporate them into our lives. Number 1, organization isn't simplification. When she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, duh. Yes, I've never thought of it in that way, but it's so true. And to look throughout our lives and see maybe where we've struggled with organization, or maybe we have over-organized and yet things still feel very chaotic and there's just too much. And to layer on top of this one, I loved her reflection of like, hey, if you are not happy, take a look. Take a look at where simplification in your time may need to be prioritized. I think it's an excellent suggestion that she provided for us. Great insight. Number 2, kill the rule. I would love for everyone listening to do this with their teams, whether you lead a team or not, to say, hey, I heard this on a podcast and I would love for us to have this conversation because I'm so curious if the same thing will happen for you that Lisa spoke about, that many people, what is talked about are rules that exist more in the minds than they do in the expectations of the people around you. So what rules would you all come up with? I would love to hear if you end up doing this. Please find me on LinkedIn and tell me how this exercise went for you. And I think it's a good reflection of your personal life too. What are the things, the rules that we've had of like, I can't say no to this, I can't turn this down. And we've developed all of these yeses that don't really serve us. And number 3, Lisa mentioned this on our prep call, and it really stood out to me when she talked about it. She mentioned it again on the podcast. It is this idea of clock versus compass, that oftentimes we're watching the clock of like, oh, I just think I need to spend this time doing this thing, or, whatever it is. We may be giving over very valuable time to things that do not get us closer to our true north, that are not close to that mission, that those values, our purpose, of why we're here. And so that reflection for ourselves, am I watching the clock or am I really strong in my compass? Because when we're more compass aligned, we will prioritize and use our time well. And again, time is the only thing we can't make more of. So it seems like a pretty precious thing to learn how to protect. Thanks for listening to the Conscious Habit Podcast. If you dug this episode, we'd love it if you would subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And if you're into this consciousness thing, if you like this conversation and you want to meet more like-minded people, head on over to Facebook and join the Conscious Habit community. Until next time, do the world a favor and go love yourself.